Welcome to the NBA Wednesday Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden, breaking down game by game here on a massive 12-game slate. You and I were just basically kind of not dreading it, but, we're not – I feel like I have to sleep for 24 hours before I dove into the slate.
I feel like I have to sleep for 24 hours after writing and researching the slate. It's kind of ugly. A lot of games to talk about. There are a few spots that you kind of gloss over. I think one of the best strategies tonight is to highlight a few games that you really want to target and make your player selection from that and maybe skip a couple of these bad matchups.
Yeah, there's a couple games to avoid, a couple of slow-paced matchups, a couple of blowouts. I mean, the slate really does have it all. Let's start with Milwaukee-Charlotte here, 203 total. Charlotte at 3.5-point favorites. Milwaukee on the back-to-back, coming off a blowout loss. How do you feel about Milwaukee tonight? I mean, I kind of want to go back to well with some of these guys. I'm a little bit worried about the front court more than I was last night with like Henson. So I don't know about your thoughts on him again.
I don't mind Henson here. Obviously, he's still fairly cheap across the industry. He's up to 4,400 on DraftKings. None of these guys played a lot of minutes last night, and I think you could see them come out a little bit fresh, even though it is a back-to-back with travel, actually. But yeah, I think you could look at Henson here. In cash games, he's probably going to be pretty chalky. He does have the ability to put up a decent game against Charlotte, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind him. I think once again, he's still cheap. Obviously, kind of a dud last night. I think he scored one real point. Still ended up with a couple of blocks. I think you know what you're going to get out of him. But as far as the high usage guys, Giannis, Chris Middleton, any interest?
Yeah, I think this is a great spot to go back to Giannis here. Again, we like using him against teams that really don't protect the rim very well. Charlotte is, despite having Dwight Howard there, is still not great at protecting the rim. He's still a very high usage guy. He still has the ability to put up huge games. And coming off a matchup where he was pretty down on himself because he got in foul trouble, he didn't play a lot of minutes. I think you could look at Giannis here, and it's probably going to go overlooked because there are a few guys in better spots. So in GPPs at 12,000 on DraftKings, I don't mind going there.
I think a lot of people are going to be, especially on a full slate. Like last night was a little bit different because it was 4 games. You could have the value to just basically jam them into your lineups. Tonight's a little bit different. I mean, there's still that value, but I think there's a lot of other ways you can go. So I think you're going to get not low ownership on him, but lower than what he's probably been over the last few games.
Yeah, for sure.
So as far as like Middleton goes, I mean, he's a guy I don't mind GPPs just because he's going to be lower owned. It's not a bad spot for him. Once again, I mean, usage rate around 26% this season. He's not shooting particularly well. He's kind of doing a little bit of everything, so I don't mind him. I mean, 6,800 on DraftKings isn't a bad price, and I just think for his ownership, if you want, a low-owned shooting guard, he's in a decent spot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if he fits your lineup, I don't mind going there. He's not someone that I'm going to actively target, but if you're trying to fill out the rest of your lineup and he just kind of fits, then yeah, you could definitely go there. Shot attempts are going to be there for him tonight. Same thing for Malcolm Brogdon, another guy that you could target in this matchup.
And on the Charlotte side, I have a lot of interest in Dwight Howard tonight. Spot where he pulled down, I believe, 22 boards against Milwaukee last time they played. He's been just kind of consistent. I mean, 5 double-doubles out of 7 games this year. Price kind of still not all that, high, I think, in comparison to some of the other guys. So I don't mind going back to the well with Howard.
I absolutely love Dwight Howard tonight. It's probably going to be another 2-center night for me on DraftKings. Dwight is one of the probably 3 or 4 centers that I am looking at plugging in my lineup. Just an absolute and insanely good spot for him.
You like Kemba tonight at all?
A little bit. I think he's a good option in GPPs. He's not going to have like any ownership at all. You like him better at home, so obviously he has that going for him. It's a spot where I would actually be looking to probably be a little bit higher than the field as far as ownership goes if I'm building multiple lineups.
Yeah, I think so. Like he's interesting. I think the price come up a little bit, from his previous few games. DraftKings, I still don't mind it. I mean, 7,600 there. Yeah, I think it's a good spot. Like, I don't mind him. Jeremy Lamb's probably a little bit too expensive for my taste on the slate. Not that he hasn't really been, playing badly. I mean, he's been pretty solid. I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a good game tonight, but I just think he's kind of a little bit expensive.
Yeah, I agree there. I think if you're looking to target someone else from this game, from the Charlotte side of things, you look at Marvin Williams, who's obviously not very appealing, but at 3,900, if he's going to play nearly 30 minutes, you could look there. I think Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is extremely interesting. Minutes are starting to climb up there. He's at 4K. He likes to he can rack up rebounds, has an ugly shot, but can be efficient scoring sometimes. You want to target wings against Milwaukee, so at 4K, I think he's actually in play.
Indiana, Cleveland next. 10-point spread here for Cleveland. I joked around, says I don't think that game stays close, or I think that game's closer. You said I would not be surprised if Indiana blows out Cleveland. I like this game actually a lot. Indiana, really a team I can target on this, just because Cleveland's been so bad defensively. And in the backcourt for India, I have all the interest in the world on tonight.
I have a lot of interest in this game as a whole. Obviously, we have a couple narratives here to talk about, with Cleveland having the first team meeting of the season. Yesterday, they had a players all air it out kind of meeting. So we'll have to see how that affects things for them. But we also have the reunion of Lance Stevenson going against LeBron James. We'll have to see if there's any ear blowing that goes on tonight.
If DK dished out points for ear blowing, I'd be all in on Lance Stevenson. I think this game's really intriguing on both sides. I think you can look at kind of high usage guys in both ways, LeBron, Kevin Love. But you had an interesting call. You were saying Kyle. Do you want me to say it? I already kind of leaned into it.
You already leaned into it. You might as well just follow through.
You said this could be a spot where Kyle Korver blows up.
I did say that, and I think this is a spot where Kyle Korver could blow up. If we're looking at here, Cleveland is without Iman Shumpert for about a week, so that's going to mean a few more minutes to go around for a guy like Korver, who's already playing a decent amount of minutes for the Cavs. Obviously, some of these games they were shorthanded before; they're still shorthanded. But if you look at his game log, 24 minutes against the Knicks, that was a blowout. 23 minutes against the Pelicans, 31 minutes against the Nets, 23 against Chicago. Korver's a guy that comes into the game and just lights it up from downtown. And the Pacers are allowing opponents to shoot 37% from downtown. They are allowing opponents to shoot almost 41% above the break threes. And that's where Kyle Korver kind of makes his money. He's shooting 61% of his almost 5 3-point attempts per game above the break. He's shooting 55% on them. We saw him torch the Pacers last year. Obviously, it's a little bit different team, but still not very good on defense. So if you're looking for a cheap guy, I think Korver could come out and probably put up 25, 30 fantasy points tonight.
Yeah, he definitely did not cross my radar coming into this slate, but I think even more so now that the more you look at it and what you pointed out, I think he's in play. I was just more giving you a hard time because it's Kyle Korver, But as far as other options go, I'm more than okay taking the discount with LeBron from Giannis tonight, the small forward position. Obviously, LeBron James has not put up good games by his standards, by fantasy point standards in comparison to the rest of the field. But we know the 60-plus game is, in his arsenal. So I like taking a little bit of a discount given the fact that, he's about 10K on both sides.
Yeah, I think he's an excellent option if you're looking to pay down from a couple of the chalk stars that are on this slate. If this game stays close, he could be in line for a huge game. If Cleveland blows them out, there's a decent chance that LeBron is the reason why they're blowing the Pacers out. So I definitely really like LeBron. I don't hate Love. This is a decent spot for him. And Derrick Rose is very interesting at his current price, going against a team that doesn't defend point guards that well and really struggles to defend pick and roll ball handlers, which is kind of what Derrick Rose has been doing a lot for this team recently.
Yeah, Rose is cheap. Only 4,900. Played 29 minutes last time against New York, so the minutes are back. Yeah, I'm okay with using him at that price tag. As you said with Love, Love's been playing well. He's kind of in an interesting price tier because, he's had a decent. I like him actually more probably on DK with the double bonus and him getting there, because he just doesn't generate enough blocks or steals for me to really generate on FanDuel at his price tag. But I like him on DK.
Yeah, that's actually where I'm kind of targeting him. It's a decent price for him, and you obviously get the double bonus and the 3-point bonus.
Yeah. So, anyone else from the Cleveland side? We kind of glossed over Indy. We'll go back here.
Maybe J.R. Smith is another cheap option as a guy that just could come in and score a bunch, but is not really a safe play.
Yeah. But on the Indy side, like I have no problem using Collison or Oladipo. I mean, Oladipo, obviously last night we were, a little bit disappointed. He only played 28 minutes. I think that's what we're going to get when we target the Kings.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to throw that out the window. Obviously, that was a blowout. I guess he had 29 minutes in the game before that. So it really depends, I guess, how Indiana is matching up against the other team. This is a spot where I would be willing to go back to the well on Oladipo for sure. Cleveland is just getting torched right now from beyond the 3-point line. Oladipo is attempting 5 3-pointers a game. He's shooting like 46% on those. I think he comes out and I think he lights them up tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I like Collison, as you said. It's just Cleveland's been bad defensively, especially against guards. And I think when you look at allowing 110 points to opponents this year, Collison 6,200 should be able to bounce back after, he was one of the guys that really did struggle last night.
Yeah, Cleveland, if you look at their last 2 games, they're really killed in transition and they're really killed on putbacks. Collison is one of the better transition guards or transition players on this team. So I definitely don't hate going back to the well, maybe stacking Oladipo, Collison, and someone else from the Indy side of this.
When you look at the front courts, Miles Turner, obviously, I believe he's ruled out already. Yeah, so we're getting Sabonis. You don't want to talk about him, but we have to.
I'm so tired of Chalk Sabonis just going off. It's another decent spot for him. Cleveland, not that great at defending, well, anyone to be honest, but not that great at defending centers either. They are a little bit better than some of the other teams at defending the roll man on the pick and roll, which is where Sabonis has been really effective this season. I will tell you this, I'm not one of those people that goes out and preaches regression, but I guarantee you he is not going to continue to hit 70% of his shots every single night. It's just not going to happen. I am not using him tonight, but if you're playing cash games, I think you just kind of have to roll him out there and eat the chalk. But I'm 100% fading him in GPPs because he's going to have a letdown game at one of these at some time, and I'm just hoping that it happens tonight.
DK, the 5,700 price tag, is something that's very tough to fade. I still think even in GPPs. I'm with you. I think obviously any time a player like this gets up into these ownership ranges, you can always make the case for fading in tournaments. So I'm with you there. Like you said, cash games it's such a tough fade. But DK, I'm still probably going to have an exposure to him in tournaments just because he is still cheap.
You're probably going to see me on Twitter like 10 minutes after this game tips off, just saying the Sabonis fade was a bad move again.
He's got 12 DK points in 3 minutes.
a first quarter double-double.
Any interest in anyone else here? Thad Young?
Yeah, you could definitely go back to the well with Thad Young and even Bogdanovich. Both those guys are interesting tonight.
Yeah, so definitely a good game stack. If you're really looking at this one. So.
Yep.
Phoenix, Washington 12-point favorites. I have a little bit of a worry here with Washington blowing out Phoenix. Then again, you and I were kind of nervous to fade anyone from this game because 118 total for Washington. As long as Phoenix keeps this game close, really, I'm looking at both guard spots here. I don't mind Porter or Oubre again here.
I like just about everyone from the Washington side of this game. I think they're all in excellent spots. Again, the concern, as you mentioned, is the blowout. But if they can somehow keep this game close, you're looking at just an insanely good spot for Wall, Beal, Porter, Oubre, Gortat. All of them are in great spots.
Yeah, I don't think we need to really dive into Washington too much because it kind of speaks for itself against the Suns. But the Suns have been playing better basketball over the last week or so. So, like, I'm not going to say this is the team that, if this was basically what we were dealing with, first two games of the season with Bledsoe and Earl Watson, like, I'd be like Washington washes them by 20. But I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and you're getting a really good discount on John Wally's 9,500 on DraftKings. Like, even in the Sacramento game, that was a huge blowout. He only played 26 minutes. He still put up almost 40 fantasy points, and he did not get to the free throw line at all. So, Wall, one of the better players in the league at getting to the line this season. Phoenix fouls a lot. They're allowing the most free throw attempts per game to opponents. Like, even if Wall plays 28, 30 minutes and this game blows out, you could still see him put up 45 fantasy points, which I'll take that at 9,500.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And basically, if this game does stay close, the starters are all running heavy minutes, really outside of Gortat, who won't really cap anything over than 33, if that. I mean, that's probably being generous.
Yeah.
So on the Phoenix side, if you are kind of looking to keep this one close, I mean, I'm okay with going back to the well with Devin Booker, TJ Warren, those guys. I'm kind of off, basically. I don't want to use the point guards. I wasn't high on them last night, especially Mike James, and I just don't think I'm going to be high on them again.
Yeah, you're going to have to decide if you want to use these guys, which one to go with. Obviously, Mike James came out and had just a huge game. Probably going to garner a lot of ownership. His price, 4,700. His price went down, obviously. Salaries are out before his huge game against Brooklyn, so that had an influence on it. But took a ton of shots, 16 shots against Brooklyn. This is a decent point guard matchup, again, about league average for the Wizards, and defensive efficiency against point guards. So if you're going to do it, I think you do it in cash games again, and you just kind of eat the chalk with Mike James. Ulyss would be a decent GPP option at only 3,900. If this game blows out, he may actually get the extra run there.
Yeah, and when you look at James, I mean, he had 4 steals on a block, last game. That's, 15 points. That's 10 points on DK. It's kind of like a little bit inflated based on those defensive numbers, where obviously scored 24 real points, but, still cheap. I get it. I'm going to probably be making some pivots off of those guys.
Yeah, if you really want to, if you think this game blows out and you really want to target someone, I think Josh Jackson is interesting. Kind of stuffs the stat sheet whenever he gets in the game. At 3,900 on DraftKings, he's multi-position eligible at shooting guard, small forward. He's still really cheap on FanDuel as well at 4,300. He's a guy that I would be interested in if you do think this game blows out and you want to get some GPP exposure.
Any interest in like their front court guys?
Not really. Maybe Alex Len sees a few more minutes because Tyson Chandler, it's a back-to-back, and Tyson Chandler played his usual minutes last night, 22 last night. So if I want to wait and see some news. Maybe they just rest Chandler or someone, and that opens some minutes up. But as of right now, Alex Len's probably the only guy I'd be looking at.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I just think with the rotations going on, Marquise Chris, Dragon Bender, it's just kind of not a spot I'm really looking to use the power for. But I think Len would be the guy, like you said, especially if we get some news about Chandler. He's been right around 20, 25 DK points, even when Chandler plays. So if we can get a couple extra minutes his way, it'll be a solid option.
Yeah, Bender might be a little interesting because we know Marquise Chris has like the lowest basketball IQ in the NBA apparently, and he just can't not foul. Like he as he's entering the game, as he's entering the lineup, he's probably thinking about fouling someone. So Bender's kind of a little bit another cheap, interesting option. The minutes have been pretty good recently.
Yep. Atlanta, Philly next here, 210 total. Philly 8.5-point favorites. I like this game a lot. I know you do as well. Let's start with the Hawks side of things. I feel like most of these guys are kind of too cheap. Like I really like Taurean Prince on both sides. I just find that he's logging pretty heavy minutes, 33, 38 hours last 2 games, 37 a couple games before that against Miami. Like the upside here for him, especially if he gets those defensive stats, is huge.
Yeah, he's just in an excellent spot tonight. I love his price. I love the minutes. I love the opportunity, the matchup. Everything lines up for him to be an excellent play tonight. It's going to be tough to fade him at that price, and given that Atlanta's a little short-handed tonight.
Yeah, they are, and I kind of don't want to say he's going to be chalky. He should be, but I don't think he's going to be maybe as chalky as what I think.
I don't think so either. Like I'm kind of leaning towards this game not being nearly as popular as it should be. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't know. I have this hunch that this game's just not going to be very popular.
No, and I think when you look at like all the other guys here, I mean, like I'm more than okay using Dennis Schroeder in this spot. His usage rate obviously through the roof to start the year. If he can play those heavy minutes again, which I was not expecting the last few games, I'm all aboard.
Oh, he's the second person in my lineups today. This is just an insanely good spot for him. We love to target him in faster paced games against terrible defenses. The Sixers, not a very good defense. Schroeder's a guy that likes to attack the rim coming off like the pick and roll. He'll just attack the rim just like with aggression. He's like Russell Westbrook out there. Sixers are allowing opponents to shoot almost 68% at the rim. So this is a good spot for him. He's coming off a great game against Milwaukee, which was a little unexpected. This guy's been good this season, so I really, really do like him. I think you can plug him in cash games, and I think he has enough upside for GPPs as well.
Yep. And with, Ursan Ilyasova is obviously still out. Any interest in front court guys? I know Muscula and John Collins have been kind of the more attractive options. Collins is a little bit expensive. He's still not logging a ton of minutes.
No, that does concern me. Obviously, he does have that double-double upside, so he's a great play on DraftKings. But Dwayne Dedmon is a guy that I actually have a significant amount of interest in here tonight. He's really cheap on DraftKings. He's only 4,500. His price on FanDuel, not terrible either at 5,100. He can produce whenever he's given the opportunity. Like obviously last game he came out and had a dud against Milwaukee, only played 17 minutes, but against Denver had a good game, 31 fantasy points. He's a guy that can go out and get you a double-double as well. And when his shot's actually falling, which his bad games, if you look at his bad games this season, like his shot wasn't falling for him, but when his shot's falling, he puts up solid numbers. I think he's a guy that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to. I'm probably going to be very overweight compared to the rest of the field.
Interest in Kent Bazemore?
Not really. Like I think I'm just sticking with like Muscala for cheap, Collins a little bit, Dedmon, Schroeder, and Prince.
Yeah, I'm with you. With Schroeder back, his usage goes down quite a bit. Still playing decent minutes, but obviously I think Prince is the small forward down there.
Yeah.
So on the Phillies side, once again, TJ McConnell, super cheap. We know Dennis Schroeder, obviously not a good defender. I have no problem going with him. He's going to be probably pretty chalky. It's just been chalk point guard city really to start the year.
Pretty much, and I don't really see a reason to fade him. I know his price is up to 5,000 on both sites, but we've seen him eclipse 30 fantasy points twice in the last 3 games. Minutes are pretty solid. He's not like a high volume scorer, but he is a guy that assists on the majority of the shots that Philly takes whenever he's in the game, and it's an excellent spot for the Sixers to put up a lot of points because the Hawks not very good at defending. They're allowing the 5th most 3-point attempts per game. Opponents are shooting 35% from 3, 45% from the field. So I really like him. I think this is a spot for the Sixers to kind of go off.
Yeah, and with that being said, like I have no issue just plugging in Ben Simmons, even at his price tag. I mean, he just continues to produce, near triple doubles on a nightly basis. His scoring, I mean, 10 for 15 from the field in each of the last 2 games. I mean, obviously, really efficient numbers there. He's not quietly. I mean, he's becoming one of the best fantasy players in the NBA this year.
He really is, and obviously we know the assist upside is there, the scoring is there. This is an excellent rebounding matchup. Atlanta allowing 48.7 rebounds to opponents. That's the most in the NBA right now. This is a spot I think Simmons could notch a triple-double, and people are still going to be off him because they're going to see his price tag of like 8,800 and be like, oh, he can't pay that off. He's not going to get me 55 fantasy points. Well, I think he can get you 55 fantasy points tonight, but I really do think locking him in as a core play for cash games is going to be a viable strategy.
Yep. And usually I have a little bit of gripe with Joel Embiid, but not tonight. I actually like him tonight. Good spot against Atlanta. Like you said, the rebounding, they're been poor this season. And I just think when you look at Embiid, he should be able to draw basically, close to 40 plus fantasy points tonight. And I'm okay with it, especially DK 7,900.
Yeah, that price has come down a little bit. I do really like him here as well. There's a lot of good centers to like. Some that have maybe a little more upside than him tonight, but I definitely wouldn't fault anyone for looking at Embiid.
No. I don't have a ton of interest in JJ Redick or Robert Covington tonight. Do you?
Oh, I love Covington tonight. This is just an absolutely great spot. We were talking about it yesterday after the podcast about how Atlanta's defense allows a lot of wide open three-pointers, a lot of spot-up three-pointers. Covington is spotting up 37% of the time. He's scoring 1.15 points per spot-up possession. He's shooting really well whenever he's getting the opportunity to spot up. I think this is a spot where Covington actually puts up a huge game. Redick is probable. You could look at him if you want to target someone that's cheap in this matchup as well.
I mean, coming off 2 bad games, you're going to get Covington at pretty low ownership in this one. Tournament only for you? Cash. I just find him always to be too risky for me in cash games.
Yeah, he's probably tournament only.
Yeah. Sacramento, Boston. I don't have really any interest here because we were talking basically Sacramento has made it incredibly tough to play guys against them just in terms of getting even to their floor at some point for some of these guys, but also the ceiling kind of lacks.
Yeah, this game will be a blowout. Like if this game stays close, like I don't know what to tell you guys. Like we're in the upside down. I mean, they've only scored 83 points in their last 2 games. They've lost their last 5 games by 17 or more points. Like this is going to be a blowout game. There's not a whole lot to really target here except for maybe 2 or 3 options, but it's kind of ugly.
Yeah, I think when you really look at, like we were talking, De'Aaron Fox is probably the only like usable king at this point because he's still getting his 25 plus minutes, the usage right off the bench. Like I'm okay with him. I don't know how much exposure I'll have to him on this slate just because it's 12 games. I don't mind some of the bench guys for Boston. Like Rozier is a guy I will have some interest in GPPs if he gets an extra run in the blowout. Like he's already seeing, around 20 minutes anyway. So if he can get 25, 26 minutes, I'm okay with him at 4,200 in tournaments because, he's going to go out there and kind of lead the way as that second unit.
Yeah. I think we really kind of had to monitor the news as well because with this being a back-to-back, Randolph probably sits, George Hill probably sits. They rested Garrett Temple last night. If Temple plays, I think you could look at him as a cheap option, only 3,400. It's so hard. I think you look at Fox and Temple and maybe like Bogdanovich and just kind of move on if you're looking at Sacramento.
Yeah, I think so. So pretty much sums up that game.
Yeah, I guess we need to talk about Marcus Morris might return tonight for Boston. He said he's good to go. They're waiting on medical clearance, I believe, but I don't really want to look at anyone from Boston. If Morris starts, that probably moves Baines back to the bench. And if Baines actually does move back to the bench, he might be a little interesting as a cheap center option going up against that Kings second unit.
Yeah, it's basically become, if you want to look at secondary guys against the Kings for blowout potential, that's where we're at right now.
Pretty much.
Chicago, Miami, this one, we're still waiting on the Hassan Whiteside news. Probably looking, did it come out?
He participated in shoot-around. He's a game-time decision, and Spoelstra said that if he plays, he will not play as many minutes as he did against the Magic. That's his minutes watch right there. Not going to play as many as he did opening night, but we don't know how many he's going to play.
So he may not play 36, but he could play 30.
He could play 35, but he's not going to play as many as he did opening night.
I mean, we can start with Miami's side. Obviously, I'm going to probably expect him to play tonight's game, which I'm not in love with this game. I think I think there is some blowout potential. Miami's good enough to kind of just run Chicago out of the building. I know Chicago's kept some games close this year, and they've been somewhat competitive, but this is still a bad team. I think on a full 12-game slate, I don't have a ton of interest with these guys.
No, I don't really either. I mean, you could make a case for Waiters. This is the second time this week I've said nice things about waiters. Like I might need to go to the doctor and get my brain checked out. But obviously, coming off a huge game against the Timberwolves, took 28 shots in that game, scored 49 fantasy points. You could go back there. With Whiteside's minutes being questionable, I don't know that I would want to risk that. This is obviously a decent spot for him. That kind of takes away from James Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, and Bam Adebayo if Whiteside's going to play.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it cuts out some of those guys that we've been on the last few games, and kind of creates a little bit of a jumble. So I don't think I need to go there, like you said. Dragic was, battling the illness. He's probable for tonight's game. Not a spot. I just think there's other point guards to use, just given the fact that, he's not a huge upside guy.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning as well.
So on the Chicago side, basically a lot of guys that are just kind of in this mid-range where I don't feel like I need to go there. Markkanen's probably been the highlight guy, but I think he's just too expensive for what he's been putting up. Like I can go cheaper and get his production.
I think in cash games, I think you can look at him on DraftKings just because he's going to come out and he's going to put up like 30 fantasy points. He's probably not going to put up more than 35, but he's still at 6,100. Like I'll take 30, 32 fantasy points out of him over on DraftKings. He's pretty much blowout proof. He's going to play, 30 plus minutes regardless of how Chicago is doing. So, coming off that game, I guess OKC, they used that opportunity to limit his minutes a little bit because of his involvement in Euroball this summer. But I think you could look at Markkanen, and I think Holiday is a great option in GPPs.
Yeah, like we saw Chris Dunn come back. Obviously the mints are kind of going to be – hopefully they kind of solidify as the season goes on with Dunn back, because I kind of have some interest in Dunn moving forward, not on tonight's slate, if he can kind of come in and step in and produce, because obviously a talented player coming out of college, one of the older guys of that class. So I don't mind him moving forward. I just don't think tonight.
Yeah, I don't think that. I definitely wouldn't go there tonight. I'm not necessarily as high on any of the Chicago point guards as other people might be, but don't hate him going forward. But yeah, definitely not tonight.
Yeah. Let's move on here. Houston, New York, 213 total. Houston just 5-point favorites. Knicks at home. I mean, Porzingis has become kind of a tough fade. I mean, if you're kind of making pivots and you don't want to pay up for Davis, or you don't want to use the Cousins or Griffin or girls like that. I mean, Porzingis is just kind of he's there.
Yeah, he is. Usage is really high. He's taken over 24 shots in his last 3 games. He scored over 30 real points in all 3 of those games. And a matchup against Houston, this is an excellent spot for Porzingis. He has a lot of upside. I really, really like him. If you decide to go a little more balanced and you want to fade, the Cousins, Davis, Harden, Giannis group of players, I think Kristaps is an excellent option.
Yeah, I kind of don't mind Cantor as well tonight. Like he's still pretty cheap. The minutes have been pretty solid for him this year, for a rotation that we kind of didn't know what we were going to get. I just think he's kind of still too cheap, and this isn't a bad spot for him. Houston's actually their worst position defending so far in terms of fantasy points allowed has been center. So, I'm okay with basically plugging in Cantor or Porzingis tonight.
I actually really do like Cantor as well. Looking back at how he's performed really well against Houston in the past, put up a couple 30-plus fantasy point games in like 22 minutes. Like, we know he can't really defend. So, like, if this game stays close, Hornacek may pull him for Kyle O'Quinn or Hernan Gomez, but I think he can actually put up a solid game in 22, 24 minutes tonight.
I mean, we saw it last game against Denver, and I know you and I kind of both don't like really looking at bigs against Denver. I mean, 12 and 9, 2 assists and a block. I mean, that was in 24 minutes. Like, I think he has a relatively safe floor. Like, I think, obviously we're only 7 games into the season, but I think he's a reasonable play.
Yeah, I hate playing the Jeff Hornacek big man roulette every single night, but I think Cantor is probably a decent option.
Yeah. When we look at some of the backcourt guys, I mean, Tim Hardaway, you mentioned you don't want to ride the Tim Hardaway chalk train, but I mean, still super cheap. He's finally kind of coming around in terms of his offensive game. He's going to eventually kind of just average out at some point, but I think at these prices, like cash games, it's weird to say, but I don't mind him as like a shooting guard too on FanDuel and cash.
I hate the idea of using Tim Hardaway. I just hate the idea of using Tim Hardaway. But I mean, the shot attempts are there. Again, last couple games, he's been shooting the ball a little bit better. He's up to like 36% over the last 5. The points have been there. Steals have been there. This is a spot to kind of target him against a Rockets team that hasn't really been defending that great. They've talked about wanting to get out and push the pace even more, which would definitely benefit the Knicks and Tim Hardaway. I think he's going to be a highly owned good option on tonight's slate.
Yeah, and speaking of highly owned, Jarrett Jack, we've danced around about 4 point guards that are in this price range that are going to be somewhat chalky. 32 minutes, 34 minutes last 2 games, 19 assists over that span. He's not scoring, but he's basically going to get you around 22, 27 fantasy points. I don't hate him, but I'm probably not going to have a ton of exposure.
I understand the play. It's a great matchup. I get it. It makes sense to play him at only 4,700. Doesn't have a very high ceiling, so you're not going to get a huge game out of him. Definitely a better cash game play on like FanDuel where you have to have 2 point guards, but I'm not using him tonight. Like eventually the wheels are going to fall off this wagon, and I'm jumping off before it actually happens because I want to fade him in the game where he comes out and just puts up a dud.
It feels like we're giving a eulogy talking about Jarrett Jack.
I mean, he's like 60 years old. He's torn like every muscle in his body at some point in his career. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how he's doing what he's doing right now, but eventually it's gonna happen where he's just gonna come out and just collapse on the court and be done.
It's intervention. We're just like, you got to stop using Jarrett Jack. Everyone's huddling around, telling you how he's hurt you.
The Jarrett Jack meeting after luck.
Anyone else from New York?
No, not really.
On the Houston side of things, I have a hard time paying up for Harden again. On this slate, I think there's other superstars that I'd rather roster. Once again, I think if you're building multiple laps, I'm cool with them. I don't mind the Eric Gordon discount. I kind of feel like a broken record saying that, but it's just how it is right now.
I think one of the best strategies to go with when the Rockets are on the slate is like if you're gonna fade James Harden, play Eric Gordon. If you're gonna play James Harden, you can fade Eric Gordon. But I think you kind of just need to have exposure to one of these 2 guys and just about every game because they are pretty much the entire offense right now. Gordon is just coming out and just jacking up a ton of shots, a ton of 3-pointers. I mean, look at his game logs after the Dallas game. He has 15, 16, 16, 14 3-point attempts. The Knicks, not a great defensive team, allowing about 34%, 35% on above the break threes, a total of 37% from 3-point range. Like, I think this is a spot where you look at Eric Gordon and you fade James Harden.
Yeah, I think so. For one, I mean, James Harden not rebounding as much this year. Knicks are a good rebounding team. Like, I need those triple double, type games from Harden to really pay off that salary, and he's just not really doing it right now. And once again, the turnovers kill him over on FanDuel. So I don't mind him once again, like in GPPs, if you want to go that route, but he's not a guy that I'm going to make a core play. I don't really have a ton of interest. It's weird in the Houston guys. Any lighting news from Madison Square Garden? Can I use Ryan Anderson tonight?
I don't have any lighting news. I don't think Ryan Anderson's a good play tonight. I think he's going to struggle to defend against Kristaps Porzingis. I think you see D'Antoni go to a different lineup with like Luke Richard and PJ Tucker over Ryan Gordon.
Yeah, I think when you look at like really the backcourt, I mean. Or sorry, not the front court. I kind of look at Trevor Ariza. He's logging heavier minutes. I'm kind of off the train right now for him. He's going to probably have a decent game at some point, but like I'm having a hard time kind of using him on a full slate, even at his cheaper price tag. Because I mean, he's 4,900 on DraftKings, and I want to bite it, but I mean, he hasn't been over really 30 DK points this year.
I'm not going there. I think the only guy that I'm really interested in is Clint Capella, and that's kind of not. I'm not like extremely interested, especially on DraftKings. He's up to 6,800. Like, it's not a great option, but if you're wanting to get exposure to this game and you're not going to do it through Eric Gordon or James Harden, I think you can look at Clint Capella.
Anyone else?
Nope.
Orlando, Memphis, 206 here. Look at the Orlando side first. Full slate of guys. Elfrid Payton's still out. Orlando's kind of an interesting spot, I guess, because if some of these guys sit like Mike Conley and Marc Gasol, it opens the door a little bit for the Orlando side, and it also opens the door for quite a bit of value on Memphis.
Yeah, it really does. This is going to be very important to keep an eye on this news. I don't know if we'll get it while we're still on this pod, but if I think Gasol's fine. I think he probably plays. Like, he was questionable before the last game and came out and was just fine. He played in that one. I think the biggest news is Conley. If Conley is out, they may sit Gasol and just kind of let the bench kind of run this game. If Gasol plays and Conley does not, you absolutely have to look at Marc Gasol, because he is just insane whenever Mike Conley is out. I kind of am interested in him even if Conley plays. Like, this is an excellent spot going up against an Orlando team that struggles to defend bigs, struggles to defend in the paint, struggles to rebound.
I think basically, I think even Tyreke Evans is in play if everyone plays. But he obviously would get a huge bump, I think, even if one or both didn't play tonight. I'm still using quite a bit of him in the spot. 25% usage off the bench. Obviously, that goes up when Gasol and Conley are off the floor. So, once again, his price tag, it's a tough fade on this one.
Yeah, if both sit, there's no way you can fade Tyreke. I believe it's 36% usage rate when Conley and Gasol are off the floor. He's averaging 1.5 fantasy points per minute in that scenario. Like, you play Tyreke Evans, you play Mario Chalmers if those two guys are out. Chalmers is definitely in play if Conley sits. And as you mentioned, Tyreke is still in play for me, even if both of those guys play.
And I'll have a hard time using Brandon Ray. I think people will probably try and plug him in, but I can't. I'd rather just have an interest in the wings, and I think they'll go small.
Yeah, I don't want to try to figure out the Brandon Wright and Jarrell Martin scenario. I just would rather fade both those guys.
Yeah, and Martin is high time foul risk. He's another one who's on close with Marquise Chris territory.
Yeah, he really is. Now, he did just get his contract option picked up, so maybe he comes out and has a good game. But I'm not going there.
On the Orlando side, if Gasol sits, I definitely have interest in Vucevic. Obviously a strut play where no one can really contend with him down low, if that's the case. I think Aaron Gordon's a sneaky play tonight. Not a lot of people are going to be looking at him in this matchup. I even think if Gasol and Conley don't play, not a lot of people are going to be looking at Orlando.
Yeah, Aaron Gordon's the guy that I have interest in if Conley and Gasol play, coming off a bad game against the Pelicans where he was in foul trouble. People may not go there. His price is down a lot compared to what it was last game. This is a great spot even if Gasol plays. I think you can lock him in as a core play, even in cash games. I think you can plug him in as a cash game option tonight.
Yeah. Can we keep riding the Jonathan Simmons train?
I think so. He's shooting the ball well. Again, the usage is there coming off the bench. I think you can still go back there. It doesn't seem like his minutes are going to go down that much. His 29 last game, 32 the game before that. I think he probably sits around that 28, 29 minute range, and you could probably go back there.
Yep. As far as the other guys like Evan Fournier, Terrence Ross, I don't have any real interest in them tonight.
No, I don't really either.
Minnesota, New Orleans. I mean, a big game for stars. We got three huge fantasy-worthy bigs sitting in this game all together. Is this game on TV tonight? I'm intrigued. I think I'm going to sit down and watch this one.
I'm not sure if it's on national television. I don't usually pay attention to that because I just stream all my games anyways.
Oh, fancy. Sorry, sir. Let's start with Minnesota side. Obviously, guys that were coming off, huge games in that game against Miami. Jeff Teague, he's going to be a guy I think this year who's going to be a tricky guy to figure out. Like, I don't mind him in this spot because New Orleans does struggle against point guards. I think this can be another high-scoring game that goes back and forth. So I'm okay with using Teague. Like, I don't feel like I'm chasing points here. This is just a good spot.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he's coming off back-to-back double-doubles. Had 23 and 11 against Miami. Also had like 6 steals in that game. It's kind of weird. He's a key to Minnesota actually winning games. Whenever he's averaging 17.3 points, 8.5 assists, 4.3 rebounds, and 2.5 steals in their wins. Those numbers go down to 10.3, 6.3, and 1.3 in their losses. If they're going to stay competitive in this game and have a chance to win, I think Teague is going to play a huge role in that. And his price is still pretty low. So he's a guy I really have a lot of interest in. I'm going to try to maybe build 2 point guard lineups on DraftKings with him and Schroeder.
I haven't talked a lot about Jimmy Butler this year. We've kind of talked about him before the show. I like him tonight. I think he's going to go overlooked because we haven't seen any type of real upside from Butler, but the minutes are heavy. We know what we're going to get out of him. He's got a relatively safe floor. I think in this spot, like, I'm probably going to probably have a decent amount of Butler tonight.
I will as well. He's a guy that's really been kind of standing out to me as I do research on the slate. You mentioned minutes. Obviously, that really helps boost his floor. The usage not as high as I would like to see, but still has the ability to score in bunches. He's got double-digit points in every single game this season. Rebounds have been there for him. Assists have been there. Like if he can notch a couple steals, I think he has an excellent game tonight, and that price is really fair.
Yeah, it is. We look at like Towns and Wiggins. I have some interest in Towns. It's kind of a cluttered front court, but I like him tonight. I think he's going to. It kind of continues to baffle me, his ownership. It was pretty low against the Heat. It was like 10% in GPPs. I don't think he's going to be anything over 15 tonight. So, like, I'm okay with him in tournaments. I think he's a little bit too expensive in cash.
Yeah, he's a guy that I have a lot of GPP exposure or interest in right now. It's a good matchup for him. I know Boogie and Davis tend to get big men in foul trouble, but Towns doesn't really try to play defense, so I'm not necessarily that worried about about him getting in foul trouble because he just doesn't even try to play defense. So a good spot for him against the Pelicans last year. He played 2 of their 3 matchups. He scored 33 points in 2 of those. Another one he was held to 9 points. So obviously a little volatile going against this double big man lineup, but it is an interesting spot for him tonight.
As far as like the secondary guys like Taj Gibson, I don't have a ton of interest in Wiggins at his price tag tonight. Like I'm not saying don't play him. Like I don't mind him, but I'm not going to go that route.
I don't really see myself getting a lot of exposure to Wiggins. And it's kind of interesting. He has some really strange home road splits this season. On the road, he's averaging 24 points on 47.8% shooting. At home, 14 points on 34% shooting. The Pelicans are bad at defending the 3-point line. Wiggins is attempting, some of these games he's attempting 6-7 3-pointers. So is not really going to do great as far as getting the other peripherals there. Not like Jimmy Butler will, but he does have an opportunity to score a lot, and this is a fairly decent matchup. So he will go overlooked. I will probably have a little bit of exposure, and I think he could be a decent GPP option.
Let's move to New Orleans here. We'll start with kind of DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis. Always kind of a night where, both of them, it's tough when they can go 60 plus each. You're trying to kind of figure out who you want to go to. I'm a little bit more interested, I think, in Cousins than I am Davis tonight.
I'm actually flip-flopped. Like I'm a little more interested in Davis than I am Cousins tonight. Both of them obviously in excellent spots. Like if you put these two side by side and didn't have their name attached to them, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Davis a little bit. He's 200 cheaper on DraftKings. Looking on FanDuel, he is 100 more. So I guess it depends on how you want to build your lineup. Like, I don't know that I want to lock in Cousins as my center play on FanDuel, which means I'll probably have Davis on FanDuel. DraftKings, you can obviously use both of them if you really wanted to. They're both in excellent spots. I don't think you can use Davis in cash games just because the injury risk. So that's probably the biggest way to differentiate between the two.
Yeah, that's if you put them up side by side and you kind of looked at their minutes, you know who was who. That's about it.
Yeah. If you look at the minutes logs, you could tell. But I mean, both these guys are just playing insane amount of minutes. Like they're hardly ever leaving the court, pulling down a ton of rebounds, scoring a lot. Yeah, we don't have to tell you guys that these guys are good plays.
Yeah, I mean, secondary options, like I'm always cool with Drew Holiday and GPPs. Minnesota's defense has just been complete. It's just been a mess, like I just can't, I kind of can't wrap my head around it. I expected better defensive numbers out of Minnesota this year, and maybe they figure it out at some point. But at the moment, I've kind of seen what I need to see, and I don't mind just kind of going full on with New Orleans.
Yeah, the Minnesota defense is just an absolute disaster this season. They're allowing like 115 points per game. They're allowing opponents to shoot like 52% from the floor, 37% from three. They're just bad. They're just really, really, really bad on defense. I like Drew Holiday, like you mentioned. Jameer Nelson probably going to fade him, but at his price, 4,400 on DraftKings, it makes a little sense. I think each one more is in a decent spot tonight. Not a ton of upside, but this is a spot where he could jack up a lot of threes and score. Get you probably 20 real points and put up 25, 28 fantasy points.
Yeah, I'm with you. Anyone else from New Orleans?
No, that's it.
All right. Heading into the later games, Toronto and Denver, 213 total. Denver back at home as 1-point favorites. I don't have a ton of interest in this game. I could see some guys maybe popping out. Like, I don't mind going with the Denver front court. I'm kind of off the backcourt for Denver on tonight's slate, just going up against DeRozan and Lowry. But like, I don't mind Paul Millsap at his price tag. And I still don't mind Jokic's anytime in GPPs.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in this game. Obviously Jokic is fine for GPPs. Millsap's okay. It's just I don't really want to get any exposure to this game. Like, just nothing really stands out as being an excellent play. Like, Jonas Valanciunas is supposed to be back. You could look at him as his price is really cheap at 4,900 on DraftKings. If his minutes aren't going to be limited, you could go there, but there's just nothing really to like about either side of this game.
Yeah. Kyle Lowry, I don't mind at his price tag. Like, he's still pretty cheap. Coming off back-to-back games where he's actually finally produced. Obviously, good spots basically in each of the last three. It's not a bad one here. Denver has improved a little bit, but still bottom half against point guards. So, like, I'm okay with using Lowry. Not a favorite play. I think he'll go somewhat lower owned too.
There's just so many other point guards like right around him that I think you're probably getting, if you're doing a lot of GPP lineups, you could definitely go there. But if you're trying to play him to be contrarian in like one lineup, I think you're being too cute.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, I think even if I was making three lineups, like Lowry probably wouldn't enter my first three. Like, I'd probably have to get to 5 before I plugged in Lowry.
Yeah, probably the same here.
So no interest really in anyone there. We didn't gloss over anyone that you want to talk about.
You could look at Gary Harris. He's playing a lot of minutes, fairly safe floor, a decent cash game option, but that's about it.
Portland, Utah, 196 total here. I don't have anyone actually from this game.
No, both these teams playing really good defense. Portland's only allowing 98 points per game. The Jazz are only allowing 93. There's nothing about this game that I want to target or even talk about. Like, you maybe have like a one-off Nurkic play or something, or a one-off Gobert play, but there's just no reason to really try to target anyone here.
I'm with you. Dallas and Los Angeles, 204 total. Clippers, 10-point favorites. I don't have a lot of interest in this game either, other than the front court for Los Angeles and more so DeAndre Jordan. I think Blake Griffin's upside is probably a little bit capped in this spot. I could see him kind of just landing around his usual 40 to 45 fantasy points tonight, and that's kind of being about it. We saw what Gobert could do, or what did to Dallas. I think DeAndre Jordan has the same type of potential. I can't do it in cash. There's just too many other options I'd rather use, but I like him in GPPs.
Yeah, this is a great spot for Jordan. I actually wrote him up in my GPP article and kind of referenced the Gobert game. Obviously, I don't expect Jordan to come out and put up over 60 fantasy points, but he's 7,300. Dallas, a terrible rebounding team. They're allowing like 46.1 per game. They're allowing almost 5 blocks per game, 9.6 steals per game. I think he's got a pretty safe floor tonight, and I want to have some exposure here to him. I think he could probably put up, a 45, 50 fantasy point game here.
Yeah. Any interest in the other Clippers guys like Patrick Beverley, Rivers, Gallinari?
A little bit. I do kind of like Beverley as a moderately priced option. Again, I mentioned, the Mavericks are turning the ball over a lot. That obviously kind of helps Beverley. Looked actually pretty good against the Warriors, even though that game was terrible and was a blowout. But I don't mind Beverley. I also really like Lou Williams coming off the bench. It's a kind of like this was a Rodney Hood spot against the Mavericks last game. I think this is a Lou Williams spot, and with him coming off the bench, he'll go overlooked, and he's pretty cheap.
On the Dallas side, any interest in these guys?
I think Dirk is a fine cash option on DraftKings, where he's like 4,700, consistently getting in the mid 20s as far as points goes. He's looking decent. Minutes only going to get about 25 to 28, so obviously not a ton of upside, but he's excellent operating as far as in the pick and roll, being the roll man. The Clippers are the worst team in the NBA defending the roll man in the pick and roll, so I think you could see him actually have a decent game. Barnes is okay as far as another cash game option at his price. He's going to get a lot of minutes. And then Barea is a little bit interesting at 4,400.
Yeah, like the Dallas guys, I think, like you said, I mean, they are playing a lot of minutes, like guys like Wesley Matthews, Harrison Barnes. Clippers defense, once again, has been, really solid to start the year. They're always a good rebounding team. So, Matthews, Barnes, I don't draw a ton of interest for me on tonight's slate. Like they do some nights, but not tonight. And Dennis Smith, obviously, in a tough spot against Beverly.
Yeah, it's mostly just a minutes thing for Barnes and Matthews. Like you want guys that are going to play a lot of minutes whenever you're building your cash game lineups, and that's what those guys are giving you. They don't have a lot of upside, but their floors are moderately safe.
Yep, I agree. Wrap it up here. Highest scoring night. I'm not going to cap anyone because we got a lot of options.
I am going to go with LeBron James coming off the team meeting narrative.
I like that. And you know what? Post LeBron James costume night for Halloween is going to be phenomenal. LeBron James.
Yeah. Oh, before you pick your guy, Marc Gasol said he's going to try to do everything he can to play tonight. So that's our best update we got.
Oh, sweet. We are like the Fox News of news here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go John Wall. Say the game stays close. We finally see a big John Wall outing tonight.
I like it. I like it a lot.
So that's it for us. Once again, you can head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com, check out our articles and content. Also, Brent has his GPP picks up and ready to go for tonight's slate. And good luck.
Yeah, good luck.